listeners, welcome to another great podcast session. I'm Shivani Muthyala. Technology has been transforming every sector, especially talking about the retail and e-commerce. It has made significant changes, within the last 5 years. And this is because of increasing usage of, whether it be smartphones or laptops or computers or even other smart devices. So we all have absorbed the demand for e-commerce growing day by day since the pandemic set, right? So while talking about India, the e-commerce market is likely to grow by 2025. It has changed the way businesses are being done across the globe now. So to elaborate on the same front, we have Kausambi Manjita, who is a CEO and co-founder of Mason. So while let's welcome our speaker for the day. Hi Manjita, how are you doing?
All good. Thank you, Shivani. Glad to be here today.
Pleasure to have you here on Analytics Insight platform. So first of all, could you brief our listeners what Mason is all about?
Absolutely. I'll start probably with a little bit of an example. So it's as retail exploded, specifically during the pandemic and a little bit beyond it, online, right? A lot of teams had to scramble to kind of set up their online stores and online presence, right? Thankfully, a lot of great technologies have been out there that has helped people to set up their online store. But think of it this way, like setting up your store is one thing, but actually running your store every single day, right? Where you have to operate all the updates that are happening, operate your complex inventories, your pricing, how customers are engaging with your products. All of these are many different operations that you have to run on your store to actually make it run like a business, right? It's not as simple as just having a website. It's a lot more complex than that. So what Mason does is it helps e-commerce merchants, stores, brands, D2C brands. It helps them run their store on autopilot. It helps them automate a lot of these updates that have to go into their stores. It helps them reduce the amount of, manual operations that they have to do to keep their store looking fresh, to keep their store engaging their customers. More importantly, it helps them optimize the amount of conversions and business that they can get out of their store. So think of Mason, I would say, like, your own store manager on autopilot in your pocket, that you can use this automated store manager and actually make your store successful.
Wonderful, happy to know about Mason. So, in the same context, so, what are the specializations and, services that the company is actually offering to its clients?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? And the beauty, of this whole ecosystem is that, specifically I'm talking about e-commerce, is that on one side you have great subject matter experts, your brand owners, people who are creating these products that they're selling to us as consumers. They're experts, right? And they're great at figuring out which are the right products, where to source it, how to package it, how to sell it to us. Right. But on the other hand, they're not necessarily technologists, but to actually run an online store, to run an online business, you inevitably have to interact with technology. You have to own technology to a large extent, right? So it's such an interesting dichotomy, because on one hand, you are a subject matter expert, you know your business in and out, but on the other hand, you have to kind of also become an expert in technology, right? So what Mason, and the question that Shivani you asked is like, what does Mason provide? It provides them a very simple no-code toolkit. You don't really have to, again, learn and become a software engineer or a technologist from on top of having to also run your business. You can use Mason to optimize your store funnel. Think of it this way. When you are, setting up your online store, your average conversion rate in a regular online store is like about 3%. Whereas if you had a old school brick and mortar store and it was doing well, that would actually convert at 50%, right? So that's the gamut, that's the difference that you have to meet. That in the real world, in the offline world, your store was converting at 50%. In the online world, it's only 3.5%. So what Mason, the no-code toolkit Mason and the services, or rather the solution that it provides, is that how do I make sure that my offers, my product bundles, my pricing, the customer reviews that are coming in, all these kinds of information are constantly getting updated back to my store without me having to, one, learn how to code to do it, and secondly, I can run it 24/7 using the automations without actually having to hire a lot of people to constantly do all these updates of my product bundles, my collections, my prices, my inventory, my customer reviews 24/7.
Amazing, that's really amazing to know about, the no code toolkit that you just spoke about. We'll come to this point later in the session. So, as you also spoke about the specializations and services, so now I wanted to ask you, since yours is a retail and e-commerce company, so how do you think, technology has, actually disrupted this particular ecosystem?
Yeah, and I think, Shivani, that's like such a important question today. Like, how, as more and more of retail is moving to online, to omni-channel, to digital omni-channel, right? How is technology helping? How is technology disrupting also? I would say the number one way that the shift that technology is bringing is that your customers are coming into your store all the time, 24/7, 365 days a year, right? Unlike in the brick and mortar world where you had certain operating hours, your customers would come from probably 10 to maybe 7 or 8 in the evening. But here it does not matter which day of the week, it does not matter what time of the day, it does not matter which part of the year, whether it's a festival season or non-festival season, you are operating something that is 24/7, 365, simply because your consumers are online all the time, right? And they are on many different channels. They are finding about your products, about your products that you're selling online anywhere, on YouTube, on Instagram, and then they're jumping on, landing onto your store from there, right? So I think the number one for me, the biggest change that I see because of technology in retail is that your customers are coming into your store 24/7, right? That itself is such a big change from the brick and mortar world. The second thing that technology is really disrupting is that on one side, your consumers are coming in 24/7. The second is that, which basically means it creates problems, right? Like, how do I operate my store 24/7? How do I make my team run 24/7, etc.? That's where the second disruption sort of starts coming in. Things like no-code, automation, AI, your customer experience management products that you have, your toolkits that you can use to, set up different workflows and systems. All of those are actually, on the other hand, helping one, you manage your store all the time without having to be present physically. Second is operate even with remote teams, right? So the second disruption that actually, newer technologies, I would say, or newer age, features like augmented reality or your artificial intelligence and all of that are bringing together is it's helping you collaborate with your teammates, run your 24/7 store, which was not possible in a physical world. So on one hand, it is creating, I would say, a pressure of how do I manage a business 24/7, but it's also giving toolkits on the other hand to kind of, operate and become successful in this new kind of world.
Very rightly said, Manjita. Whether it be, customer stores, they are coming almost 24/7 and 365 days. Yes, is indeed, a little bit issue. But, we can also look at the advantages it also brings, right? So, and the other is the usage of technologies, as you very rightly pointed out, the new technological trends, whether it be no code or, for that matter, artificial intelligence or big data, cloud, even this are helping businesses to ease a bit. So while coming to the e-retail storefronts, they have also been picking up slowly these days, right? So especially after the pandemic. So we would like to know how Mason is actually helping such e-retail storefronts to grow a bit.
Thank you for that question. It's very close to my heart, and I think as I started, when we started the conversation, one of the things that I mentioned was that it's becoming easier to kind of set up an e-retail storefront, but it's of course getting harder and harder to operate your e-retail storefront, right? And that's where essentially products and technologies like Mason can really help, right? And the reason is very clear. The reason is that one, your customers are coming in at any point in time, which we already spoke about, but second, also your store is getting very digitally omni-channel distributed, right? Like, because when you come to think of it, an e-retail storefront is not just your web store or your app, but it's also in a way Instagram, right? It's also in a way WhatsApp, right? Because there are also customers there who might have seen some promotion about you on an Instagram, on Facebook. They might have seen an ad, or they might have seen another customer who's already bought your product and has spoken and vetted you and said, I love this product that I bought from this brand, right? So all of these also kind of become, extended, I would say, arms of your e-retail storefront, right? And as I mentioned, how it's really hard, one, to operate your store 24/7. And now think about it, your store is not just like this website, but it's all these different extended arms and branches that you have, where maybe even a different customer has mentioned your products, and now other people, other consumers are interacting with that message that a customer mentioned and are coming to your store or are experiencing your store and your products for the first time. So maintaining this authenticity, I would say, of your communication, like as a brand, you want to also, as a retailer, you want to maintain your ethos, right? You want to say, always be you and not someone else. You don't want your consumers to confuse between you and other brands. So one is just how Mason helps is how do you maintain this ethos of communication, right? And there are different levers there. Teams can kind of encode their own brand guidelines, encode guidelines on what kind of communication goes on what channel, etc. The second thing over here is that this is distributed storefront. So I definitely want to make sure that if there's some back office information of my business that's changing, very simple example, if my product is running out of stock, right? If this t-shirt, let's say, a certain size is not available or a certain color version is not available, how do I make sure that information is transparently propagated back to all these different, branches of my e-retail storefront, right? It's important because as a consumer, I might lose trust. If I'm interacting with a brand on, let's say, Facebook, I see a product and I like it. And when I try to buy it, the product is not there or my size is not there. I start losing trust that, hey, they're never, in stock. They never provide the right information. I might lose trust. You might lose credibility as an e-retail storefront. So the second thing that Mason helps with is how do you constantly communicate this information, of the data, I would say, the data of your business, the core business, and propagate it back as communication across all your storefronts. So one is, of course, operating the storefront 24/7 for sure by automations. Second is, enabling a very unified brand voice across all channels. And the third thing is how do you make sure that this data is continuously converted into communication. So these are three ways that Mason helps, retailers grow.
Amazing, how Mason is actually helping other, e-retail storefronts to, not only to grow, but also to sustain in the market. And that's amazing. So, nowadays when we take a look at the market, so as you just spoke about the low code, so how has been, the low code has been very, very significantly found everywhere. And it's really popular these days. So, why do you think this low code or no code SaaS platforms have been gaining this attention, especially when we look at the India or, the Southeast Asian setting?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is when interestingly, yesterday I was speaking to someone and this analogy struck me is that when the internet boom happened, people globally were on desktops, whereas Southeast Asia, in India, a lot of people got exposed to internet for the first time through their phones, and smartphone adoption was crazy, in here in this part of the world versus in other parts of the world where internet people were already accessing from their desktops, and this made a lot of disruptions that then propagated back to different parts of the world. So Southeast Asia, India, we are unique that way. A lot of us jump across technology phases to the next phase, right? A lot of people, majority of people in this part of the world never access internet on a desktop or a laptop, but they definitely access internet on their smartphones, right? And that is literally how I see low code and no code adoption right now in this part of the world. We are not necessarily a developer first ecosystem, right? In our schools and colleges, in our education system, even though computers, coding are a part of our infrastructural learning, I would say, learning models, but it's not something that is extremely well propagated. Like, everybody is not from day one knows how to code, right? Whereas if you go to the Silicon Valley, etc., even young people, 9-year-olds, are trying how to code, right? It's not like that here. And that's why when the whole no-code, low-code has in some way or the other been there for a while, but it's the right time right now when people in this part of the world are trying to create more and more. They're becoming more aware about technology, about SaaS, about solutioning, and we want to create our own solutions, right? And on the other hand, no code globally is shaping up to a place where technology is becoming so much more robust that even without having to code, there are ways for people to utilize technology to create their own solutions, right? So both these sort of trends are coming together, and I think looking at like this whole analogy of the smartphone trend, I have a strong inkling that over these next few years we'll see a lot of solutions that are no code or low code in nature, that doesn't need really deep understanding of coding languages, etc., for people at a mass to pick up and create their own solutions, right? So for all that maybe in 5 years you'll see a lot of different solutions and apps, etc., coming out of all these regions, which are actually built on no code platforms. So that's actually my vision of what and my philosophy of why I think no code and low code can really pick up and is already picking up in this part of the world.
Absolutely. So when we are also talking about the Indian context, so post-pandemic, in this particular in Indian setting, in the post-pandemic era especially, so what is the state of the low-code platforms, do you think, and how can they actually add value to the country's development?
First of all, anything that is no code or low code in nature, it basically means that a subject matter expert can now create a solution without having to communicate that problem and the solution to a developer and a designer who then translate it, right? Think of it as if I can cook my own, right? If I have the right ingredients, if I have, a recipe kit, and I can make my own biryani versus, instructing someone else that I think I want the biryani to be made in a certain way, right? I think the analogy is very, very similar. Like the subject matter expert, the person who knows that problem, it is very hard for me, for example, to constantly, make sure that all my customers who are posting pictures about my products, that they love it on social media. I want some way for those pictures to also show in my store, right? Something as simple as that. Before, people could create their own solutions through no code and low code, these things would need a developer, a designer, someone, a product manager also probably coming and now designing, creating this roadmap, designing this product, working, coding it, then testing it. Then the subject matter expert will say, no, this is what I wanted. So all this back and forth goes away. Because what happens is then now the subject matter expert can create the solutions, right? So I'm giving just a very simple example, but now step back and beyond retail in any sphere, right? You will have people who are closest to a problem can create solutions for their problem, right? Without having to translate that solution through other people. Right? And that's a big change, and it's a big shift. It totally changes the dynamics of how what kind of solutions are out there, because nobody's imagining it anymore. It is my problem. I'm creating my own solution, and there are many like me, so they will find the solution really meaningful. So I think that is for me how. And once that happens, of course, the economy evolves because people are not stuck with the problem anymore. They can find a solution that actually matches their needs, right? And once that happens, of course, your businesses grow, economies grow, and countries grow.
Perfect. Thanks for explaining that very well, Manjita. Hope our listeners will also relate to the same analogies that you have just mentioned. So in the same context, what are the benefits that businesses have witnessed through this low code or no code technology, according to you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, as I mentioned, the experts who face the problem can create the solution, so that definitely helps build the solutions much better. The second is time to market. As a business, if I have a problem and I need a solution to it now, it's so much faster for me to create that solution or probably use that solution. I'm talking about creation of no-code products and solutions, but there's also the other angle of using no-code products and solutions, right? Something that does not need 6 months development or implementation cycle, something that doesn't need like my entire team to change their process and workflow. Right? Something that is very easy and in 2 clicks can do things, which probably with different no-code products, somebody has to come and implement it on my business, right? So the second is definitely time to market. It makes me more nimble as a business because I can quickly find a solution, either create it or implement it. Right? And the third is that it gives you the flexibility to also modify your solutions faster, right? Because as a business, your problems are not always the same. Your problem also morphs, right? Your problems morph rather. And today, at one size of a business, you have a certain problem. As your business hopefully grows, your problems also evolve and you change, right? No-code solutions also make it very easy because most no-code solutions are very plug and play. So you can really swap out, create, modify that very, very quickly. So as your business changes, as your needs change, you can keep modifying, your solution. You're not stuck with like that one solution that you bought for one problem. And now you're like, okay, now my problems have evolved. How do I find this next solution for my new problem, right? So these are 3 ways that I think no-code really adds value to business.
Very rightly said. It really indeed adds a lot of value. So, now just going a little bit off the topic. So we also want to know, how do you see the design thinking intervention in the current scenario?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite topics is 2 of my favorite topics, we are talking about today. And design thinking at the very core of it is, how do I create the most meaningful and elegant solution to a problem? That is design thinking, right? And that's also a very strong core of product building, right? And I think as consumers, we are getting more and more discerning about what we want, what we need. We have so many options. When it comes to content, for example, we have so many content options now, so many different channels, so many different platforms and social platforms, such great creators creating so much content. You're discerning. Don't just get stuck with that one serial or episode that you have to watch. You have like a buffet of options. So you can really pick and choose what you want, right? So I think content is an example. Anywhere else, like in brands also, we've so many D2C brands really exploding. So you are very discerning. You have so much options. You also become more discerning in your choices. You're like, no, I can't do with like subpar customer experience. I definitely need great support, etc., etc. I need great fulfillment. I need the product quality to be high. And so that, in a way, is, when you come to think of it, even the consumers are becoming design thinking first, right? Like they're thinking in terms of what best solves my need state, right? What is the best solution to my problem? What is the best product that solves my wishes and wants and needs right now, right? So consumers are becoming more discerning, which is the baseline of, or I would say, which is the fundamental of design thinking, is that they want things that work well for them, or we want things that work well for us. And because of that, right, even businesses on the other side of the consumers have to provide great customer experience, whether it's in their store or off their store, whether you are sending them an email or you are actually sending them a product. How do you implement design thinking into something as simple as a thank you card that you can send probably with your bundle of products that you have that you have couriered to them, right? How do you engage back with them at different festivals, during their important anniversaries and birthdays, etc., right? There's so much of design thinking you can apply across the consumer funnel, right? And that's how I find it very interesting now, that design thinking in the earlier days was more about, hey, how do you build products? And so to build great products, you need like design thinking. But I think even consumers are thinking a lot about how do they design their life to be beautiful and, great, right? Through the pandemic, it's become even more and more important. You care about how your health, your bodies, your mental health, and so much. So you're constantly, as a consumer, also thinking design first, thinking how you're redesigning your life, right, consistently to make it really good and comfortable and happy and all of that. And so it's even more meaningful and important and pertinent for businesses on the other side to adopt design thinking in their entire business process, not just into building the products or building the apps.
Very rightly explained about the whole of the concept about the design thinking intervention in the current scenario. Thanks for that, Manjita. So as you just spoke about the D2C, so what according to you are the trends that are going to shape up the D2C e-commerce space in the coming years, or most likely in 2022?
I would have two words for it: data and design. I think like that is it, right? Two things that will completely be make or break on how brands differentiate themselves, make themselves loved, scale as a business, is data and design, right? And on one side, how do you constantly design the best experiences, design the best products that you're selling to the customers, design the best funnel, right? On the other hand, how you are consistently also utilizing the data that you are gathering, because you're online, so there's just a tremendous amount of data, right? So how you're consistently taking the data and putting it back into your design, right? And that's where, by the way, like at Mason, we really believe that design and data have to be connected, and that's essentially what we help do. On one side, of course, we are helping customers, we are helping e-storefronts do better business. But if you look at fundamentally the core of how, that's because we connect design and data together. We read what is happening in your business data, and then we help you communicate it back, which is design, right? So I think the way that any D2C brand, as it starts scaling, they'll see that their disruption, right? Their differentiation is that how much are they thinking design consistently and how much data they are bringing in back into their everyday operations.
Perfect. So, and lastly, what piece of advice would you like to give our budding leaders who actually are planning to step into this particular space?
I think for anybody who wants to step into any space, I think my first most important advice, if I may, is always that, hey, it takes a lot of commitment and time, right? And it needs depth. So exactly like when you are creating a great D2C brand, you definitely need, it's not a 2 months short stint, right? It's something that you need to give that love, you need to give that attention, you need to have that attention to details, right? It's the same whether you're building your own startup, you're building your own brand, you're joining an organization. I think consistent, and you are the leaders of the future. So I think the primary thing is that it needs that attention to details. It needs you to give that time and attention. And once you can do that, you'll start reaping the rewards, right? You'll start that your first level of thoughts are always very superficial, but as you keep giving that time and space and mental bandwidth and dig down, you'll see that your the way you're approaching everything, keeps getting better and better, right? So I think my number one advice would be it needs, everything that you want to do in life needs your time, attention to details, right? And you need to invest that in order for you to reap the rewards.
I'm sure, this is going to really benefit all our listeners. Thank you so much, Manjita. It was really a pleasure talking to you. And, hope all our listeners have gained valuable insights from this session and looking forward to see even more innovative solutions, coming up from Mason's Den. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Shivani, and have a great weekend and Diwali.
Great. So, listeners, stay tuned for more such interesting podcasts. Thank you. See you all again very soon.